Introduction to a research paper. Detailed instructions. Research papers often include an introductory section in which the author introduces the paper's subject and methodology to the reader. Among its primary aims are: introduce yourself and your subject to the reader. Give some context or a brief overview of the relevant literature. Set your own tack. Specify the nature of your research question. Detail how your paper will be organized. Whether your article reports the findings of unique empirical research or builds an argument by analyzing and synthesizing material from other sources, its introduction will take on a somewhat different form. You may use the 5 stages outlined below to help you write a solid opening for any form of research paper. First, you'll want to provide an overview of your subject. The primary purpose of an introduction is to brief the reader on the nature of the issue at hand and to establish its relevance or significance. In most cases, a compelling beginning hook is used to achieve this goal. Your paper's success hinges on the hook, which is an attention-grabbing first line that immediately establishes why your subject matters. Choose a fact, statistic, remark, question, or story that relates to your subject and will pique the reader's attention. Here's an example of a strong introduction for a study on the environmental effects of cattle farming. Topic sentence for an argumentative essay: Do cows cause global warming? The following might serve as the hook for a more scientific study of how Instagram affects teenage female self-image. Paper clipped evidence: the incidence of body image disorders among women and girls has grown with the popularity of social media. You shouldn't worry that the hook you come up with needs to be really clever or unique. Still, there is no substitute for clarity and applicability when communicating. The most important thing is to lead the reader into the issue and provide context to your views. Second, provide some context. It's up to you to tailor this section of the introduction to the methodology your paper will use. This is the kind of broad establishing detail that you might examine in the introduction of a more contentious work. This is where you would discuss the work of others and explain how your own contributes to the body of knowledge in an empirical article. Providing context for your argument. Once you have the attention of your reader, you may go into additional detail, giving background information and refining your focus. Context of a document arguing a position. A recent research, RIVM, 2019, demonstrates that cattle producers account for 2/3 of agricultural nitrogen emissions in the Netherlands. Manure's nitrogen may be broken down into ammonia and released into the air, leading to these emissions. According to the study's findings, agriculture is responsible for 46% of the country's overall emissions of nitrogen pollution. However, just 1% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from industry, while road transportation and residential consumption each account for 6.1%. Don't overwhelm the reader with unnecessary context. Extensive explanations are not required in the introduction but may be included in the body of the article if they are deemed necessary. Research report based on actual data and empiricism. You won't be summarizing the work of others. Rather, you'll be explaining your own unique study. What follows is a condensed version of a literature review. Think of it as a thumbnail description of the current state of research on your issue. There has to be some serious reading involved here. You don't need to do as comprehensive of a search as you would for a complete literature review, but you do need to have a good understanding of the relevant studies. Research types should be established first, followed by research restrictions and gaps that will be addressed. Contextual evidence from empirical papers. The subject of Facebook use among teenage females has been the subject of a number of scientific research papers: Tigerman and Slater, 2013, Meyer and Gray, 2014. These studies have shown time and time again that the platform's visual and interactive elements are the most effective in addressing problems related to body image. Despite this, there hasn't been much study of HVSM like Instagram. In the third step, you will define the study issue you want to investigate. The next stage is to define the relevance of your study and the issue it solves. How to write an argumentative essay. Just introduce the issue you will be discussing and why your take on the subject is novel or significant in the introduction of an argumentative research paper. Issues in researching an argumentative paper. Though steps are being taken to reduce emissions, officials are hesitant to face the full scope of the issue. The solution proposed here is drastic, yet it's appropriate for the gravity of the situation. Fourth, define your target. You will now elaborate on the details of your research paper's intended findings or expressions. The terms you choose to describe your study's aims might change. A thesis statement is presented in an argumentative paper, whereas a research question is often presented in an empirical study, sometimes accompanied by a hypothesis about the answer. The thesis statement in an argumentative essay. The thesis statement is an assertion that will be defended using reasoning and supporting details throughout the article. Your perspective should be stated in one or two phrases, and you should avoid presenting particular justifications for it at this time. Statement of the case. In this study, the author proposes that the Dutch government should incentivize and assist animal producers, particularly cow farmers, to make the switch to sustainable vegetable cultivation. Questions and hypotheses for an empirical paper. In an empirical study, the research question is the central research inquiry. Give your research question in as few words as possible at this stage. This is the only place you get to state your query. The remainder of the paper is dedicated to answering it. You may either directly or indirectly pose a research question. The purpose of this research was to determine whether or not regular Instagram usage had any influence on the rate at which teenage females report having body image problems. We looked at how regular Instagram usage affected the rate of body image problems among young women. Along with your research topic, you should include any hypotheses you want to evaluate. As the hypothesis will have been proven or disproved by the time you get around to writing your paper, these sections are often written in the past tense. Fifth step, create a paper outline. In many essays, a concise summary of the body follows the introduction. This isn't necessarily required in a scientific publication following the typical introduction, methodology, results, and discussion style. However, if the structure of your article is not conventional, you should explain that structure to the reader.